So welcome to Unbroken, the safe place for male survivor podcast.
Because every male survivor deserves hope, healing, support, and a BMW. And here's your male survivor, leadership coach, and hypnotherapist, Thomas Edwards.
All right, everyone, welcome. You know, it's so funny. It's like every time I get ready to do a podcast, like, I don't know if this is mental or not. It triggers my voice, and then like I have to clear it, and I have to get some tea or something like that. I don't know what it is, but I need to check this out. Hey guys, welcome once again. Happy Thursday. Always do these on Thursday, because then in Thursday evening we have our male survivors group coaching session. So I try and keep everything kind of within one day. Enjoying the California. We actually got some rain the other day. We just had this little thunderstorm that came through for about 15 minutes. Awesome, especially where we live, because we're always needing water. So when summertime gets here, it doesn't get rationed. So that's really important. And you know, it's funny when I listen to that old intro, and I think about it now. You know, we need a BMW, and I'm like thinking, well, yeah, now you probably need either an electric, whatever, BMW or something, because the gas prices in California are like $7 gallon for the petrol. So yeah, I'm thinking, okay, maybe the next one I need to get needs to be a hybrid. I don't know. I'm still kind of waiting for, you know, the whole electric infrastructure, you know, where you can actually, you know, get the energy if you actually need it, as opposed to trying to figure, okay, you know, between this stop and the next stop, how many miles can I actually go before? So maybe one day we'll have that in play. All right. Shout out to my guys in the UK. Thank you once again, of course, for the questions and things that you send. And then actually, I think I'm supposed to do a podcast for another group this week that are actually in the UK. So that's great. That means that you guys are listening. So that is wonderful. All right. Let's see. If you'll notice now on the website, because I'm always, you know, updating and putting different things up there, I've tried to link some of the YouTube videos right for the channel. And then I just kind of put one up as just kind of an intro, so to help you just know me a little bit better for those that are interested in possibly doing the Break My Abuse program. And yeah, so just keep expecting to churn stuff out, because that's what I do, you know, after, you know, I'm doing coaching sessions with guys, and I think, oh man, you know what, that'd be a great module. And so then I go ahead and I create it. So that's why they're like, well, how is it that you have like so many different, like, you know, hundreds of different modules up there? Because they come from the actual guys themselves. So it's like, okay, if we're going to help somebody work through this, then let's create it. And so when someone else comes through, then we already have the material that is up there. And so the material I'm going to actually put up there for you guys that are possibly dealing with flashbacks, I'm going to put that in I think the blog section. So if you check the blog, I'll have a little blog on there, and then I'll have a download where you can actually download, because someone had asked me like, hey, how do I kind of deal with, you know, flashbacks? Now, we're not talking about the acute ones. See, this is the thing. People are like, how do I know if I should work with you, T? You know, I got stuff that's going on, therapy and stuff. So for me, we just want to make sure that you're not in what I call acute post-traumatic stress disorder. And so what do I mean by that? If, let's just say, your flashbacks, your night terrors are affecting you on a daily dysfunctional perspective, right? And so they're so bad that you can't even daily function, right? Okay, then this is not the program for you. In other words, we need to get that under rein first, and then we come into the program and then start working the different things. And yeah, we do deal with flashbacks and those different type of things. You know, the neural, the nervous system. So we do deal with that. But if you are in acute phase as opposed to complex post-traumatic stress disorder, then it's like, okay, we need to do triage, right? And so we need to get you to a place where that triage can take place. And then when you're not in triage, then you can come into the program and really get a bang up job for working through some of the issues. All right. So we're going to continue our next, if you want to call it part 2 of the self-sabotage loop. So when I asked for this, so we're going to go into it. And so you guys remember, if you haven't listened to the first one, we dealt with Shamus. Shamus was someone that I worked through. So we are actually using, I'm going to say, pieces of his story. So now let's kind of move into it. I'm going to say, let's go a little bit deeper, because now we're going to be hitting when, self-fulfilling prophecies and identity loops, and, how the shame sometimes becomes our destiny, and it fits into this whole pattern. So I'm going to say when the shame becomes identity. So, self-sabotage is not just behavior, but it is identity protection. Now, I need you to let that sentence land. And that's because most men think that they sabotage because they're impulsive, they're reckless, they're addicted, or weak. These are the things that we kind of either tell ourselves or accept. But I want you to think about, what if the sabotage is actually protecting a belief? Well, okay, now sit with that. And that belief is, this is who I am. Once again, the shame. I had to hit the cough button there, man. And so this is who I am. Not who I want to be, not who I could be, but who I fundamentally am. Now, when we talked about Shamus' story on the last episode, for Shamus, the abuse at 8 didn't just hurt him, but it actually defined him, at least in his mind, and not consciously, but internally. And so here's what trauma often, we're going to say, writes into the child's identity. If you want to say, puts a label, puts a tag, but this is kind of what it writes on the tabula rasa, as we call it. I'm dirty. I'm complicit. I'm broken. I attract harm. I cause harm. Or even like I ruin things. And so then as children, what we do is we personalize the trauma. And so we don't say, hey, an adult violated me. What we say is, there's something about me that made this happen. And what happens is that belief sinks deep. And if that belief isn't corrected, if it isn't, kind of rewired, then in adulthood, we live in alignment with that. And so then what happens? Well, then that moves us into, I'm going to say, the self-fulfilling prophecy kind of mechanism. And so someone asked me, they're like, whether self-sabotage becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm going to say, well, yes. And I'm going to say, here's how. So that prophecy begins as identity. So identity then creates expectation. Now that expectation starts to create vigilance. Okay. From the vigilance, then we create, I'm going to say, misinterpretation. And now that misinterpretation actually creates reaction. And then the reaction creates outcome. And then the outcome, what it does is it confirms, it solidifies that identity. So let's just kind of walk through this, and I'm going to say we're going to talk about using Shamus and his example. So identity. So I'm going to use kind of phrases here. Hopefully this will help us to understand. So identity. So let's just say Shamus is going through, and this is what he was. I ruin things. Okay, so that's the identity. I ruin things. So then what's going to be the expectation? So the expectation is, let's just say he's going into a relationship. well, this relationship will fail, right? Because my identity, then the expectation. All right. So where does the vigilance come in? Oh, he starts scanning for signs that, oh no, she's going to leave. Okay. So now vigilance, I'm scanning, I'm looking for the signs that are going to confirm the expectation, which is part of the identity. And then we have the misinterpretation. Why is she so quiet tonight at dinner? Oh no, she must be pulling away. Okay. So we start seeing the signs and we start misinterpreting, right? So then the reaction comes, right? So then he picks a fight to regain control. Now, what's the outcome? Well, her being, we're going to say an independent woman, she withdraws because no one wants to be treated like that. And then what happens? Then there's the confirmation. See, I ruined things. All right. So now the prophecy is complete. Okay. But here's the crucial insight. The prophecy is not about the relationship. It's about protecting that identity that we started out with. So if Shamus starts succeeding, consistently succeeding, then something terrifying happens. And that is his identity actually becomes unstable. And unstable identity feels, I'm going to say, more dangerous than failed identity. And that's because at least failed identity is familiar. I remember when I was working with and talking with Shamus, I'm trying to think, because sometimes we talk about collapses, and I think he was around 29, 39 or something like that. But I remember he was offered a promotion, right? And so it's now real money, real responsibility, real visibility. And so his boss, said to him, hey, we'll see how this long-term leadership, I see it in you, right? And this is the position I want to promote you to. And then I remember it was like that night, then he actually kind of starts feeling a little bit of the weight, we're going to say, of that statement of the responsibility, kind of, that hum in the chest, or you're a little bit restless, maybe tight, maybe a little bit irritable. And I remember his girlfriend, she was excited because he was getting promotion, right? This would be more money, those different type of things. And so she hugged him and he stiffened. Now, some of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But the thing is, he doesn't know why. So what happens? The next day, he actually misses a meeting. And then the day after that, he called in sick. And by Friday, because I think this was Wednesday, he was drinking. 2 weeks later, he was fired. And he told everyone, it was politics, corporate, whatever, politics. Now, inside, he's relieved. So the relief is the part that no one actually talks about. Relief that pressure, when we talk about the promotion, relief that the pressure is gone, relief that the exposure is over. So now I'm not going to be in this big visible whatever place where everyone can see me because of the promotion. And then relief that now he's back into familiar territory, right? That nervous system. Oh, this just feels familiar. Now, relief, please get this. Relief that we're talking about here was the reward loop. Okay. And reward actually wires behavior. All right. So did you understand that? Now, it's so funny because then when we talk about the neuroscience, this whole little thing that's going on with the looping and the reward and the sabotaging, it's actually, I'm calling it a dopamine twist. Okay. So this is where I'm going to say neuroscience matters. And this is the reason I love neuroscience so much, because so many times when I'm working with people like, oh, that's just the way that I am. I'm like, nope, that's your nervous system. It's in survival mode. And there's some things that are going on here. And so this one is the dopamine twist. So when Shamus sabotages something good, his nervous system actually experiences relief. And so guess what happens? So the relief actually reduces cortisol. Now, you guys have listened to me enough and you know that cortisol is considered the stress hormone, right? So when he sabotages, though, it reduces his cortisol. Now, that relief actually reduces threat activation. Now, we've talked about the amygdala, so everyone knows where that is, the detector. And then that relief can even release dopamine, okay? One of the strongest drugs which our body produces on the face of the earth, the dopamine, which means that sabotage actually feels regulating, okay? Not during, but immediately after you get the dopamine hit, the twist. And that relief, guess what it does? It reinforces the loop. And so now the brain learns, hey, blowing it all up actually makes the tension stop. Now just think about how the brain is being wired here. So even though the long-term cost is going to be devastating, this isn't really insanity. It is conditioning. And so for Shamus, it's kind of this idea of when success actually feels dangerous. And so I'm going to say there's something almost, I'm going to say no one teaches male survivors, at least that I've run into. And that is that success can be more triggering than failure. For those of you who know the article that I wrote when we talk about the high functioning male survivors, maybe I'll have to put that one up on the website too. But success can actually be more triggering than failure. Now, failure confirms identity. Remember, we talked about that identity when we started out. But success actually challenges it. It challenges that identity. And challenging identity actually creates instability. So Shamus isn't afraid of losing the promotion. He's afraid of actually being seen at that level. And that's because being seen, okay, now where's this going to go back to? It's going to go back to that little 8-year-old mind there, which meant vulnerability when I was seen because someone was abusing me. And abusing me meant that I was seen, which meant I was vulnerable. And so now this promotion is going to allow me to be seen again. And the emotional resonance goes right back to that little 8-year-old child. And vulnerability meant violation. So that's the message that we have. And so now his nervous system is going to equate visibility is equal to danger. Now, imagine you're a professional, you're sitting across from someone like this, like Shamus, and you think, he doesn't want this opportunity. But internally, he might be thinking, hey, I cannot survive this exposure. See, that's a very different problem. Now, let's intensify this a little bit. You're like, oh, I don't know if I can do any more intensifying. So remember last time we added the for those, because someone asked me about this. So they're like, okay, but I'm ADHD. Okay, so let's talk about the ADHD plus the shame spiral. So that's why I said, let's intensify this. All right, so now I have ADHD. And this person did. So this is the reason I'm bringing this in. So now I have ADHD and it's layered in. And so now the loop accelerates. So here's how, right? So emotional spike happens. The impulse rises quickly. The tolerance for discomfort is lowered. And then relief-seeking behavior activates fast. Bam, just like that. So instead of sitting with the activation for 10 minutes, he acts in 30 seconds. Okay, this is where the ADHD is intensifying. All right, and so then the shame, it hits and it hits hard, right? And so now his ADHD can actually amplify the shame because of rejection sensitivity. So one mistake becomes, oh no, we're going to say catastrophic. I've destroyed everything. And then that all or nothing thinking triggers more sabotage. And so this is why when we talk about this, punishment alone doesn't work. I have guys that come in and they just tell me with, some of the therapists, the ways, whatever techniques, whether they were using, and I'm like, my goodness, what you're doing is you're just punishing the person, and punishing them doesn't work, right? It actually increases the shame. And so then the shame reinforces the identity, and then the identity is fueled, and now we have more sabotage. And so you can't shame a person out of a shame-based loop. All right. So for those of you, if that's the case and you're working with someone, please just think about those words. So let's just talk a little bit. I'm going to say about a hidden trigger, which is probably calm. We hadn't really thought about it. So let's talk about something subtle, and it is the calm. So now for many trauma survivors out there, I'm going to say that calm is not neutral. For you, calm actually feels suspicious. And the thing is, things just seem like they're too quiet. And so then when they're too quiet, like nothing's going on, the nervous system is now anticipating harm. Now, maybe that's because in childhood, quiet may have been precedented by abuse. And I told you guys, like with me, it's like the car, here it is. I don't know how many years later. And still, when I hear a car door slam, I get I don't probably jump as I did as much, having worked through the issues, but it just still feels uncomfortable because I remember what would come after the car door was slammed. Someone was coming. So when we talk about adulthood, calm activities, they actually activate hypervigilance. And so then hypervigilance looks like picking fights, creating drama, stirring tension, seeking stimulation, using substances, whatever, taking risks, right? Chaos actually reduces the discomfort of calm. All right. Are you starting to see the pattern here when we talk about the self-sabotaging loop and how powerful it is? And so it makes the environment actually match the nervous system. Okay, so one more time. So the chaos actually reduces the discomfort of the calm, of the quiet. It's kind of like I'm trying to think, is that me? Because I sleep with a fan on. But there are some people that when it gets too quiet, they can't sleep, right? Their mind is going to all different type of places. And so maybe you're like me, you sleep with the fan on or something like that. And I'll just be honest with you. I sleep with the fan on because I'm just from the perspective. I'm like, look, if someone's going to come in here and knock me out, at least I'm going to be asleep. So maybe that sounds a little bit morbid, but that's what I do. So I usually have the fan, and then I have the water, computer water, whatever, background rain going on also. And I sleep better because then I'm not focused on every little whatever sound, whatever that I can hear because of that constant oscillating and rain falling. But like I said, the chaos actually reduces the discomfort of calm. And so what we do is we take the environment and we match it with what's going on with the nervous system. And then that means that it feels congruent. Now, so I'm working with Shamus, and then we're going to call this kind of the moment of realization. I can't remember how old. This has been a while. But I think it was in his 30s. Okay, so Shamus is in his 30s. And then when he finally said it out loud in one of our coaching sessions, I think it was the retreat, that I was abused. He didn't say it dramatically. He just kind of said it flatly. And oftentimes when guys come to the retreat, and one of the purposes of the retreat is we get to tell our story, but we actually connect with our story. And so we're not, as I call it, sanitizing and minimizing and sanitizing our story. We're actually connecting with it. So he kind of said it flatly. But something had actually, I'm going to say, changed in his body. So his shoulders kind of, drooped, his jaw unclenched, and he actually briefly started crying. And I remember what he says. He said, do you think that has anything to do with why I keep ruining things. Okay. Now, that question actually for him, it was a doorway. It's not an answer, wasn't an answer, but it was that question. And that's the thing I love about coaching, because it's the questions that cause you to think. Because now the pattern is externalized. So instead of, am I broken? It becomes, something happened that shaped me, that influenced me. And that shift actually starts to reduce the shame. Now, oftentimes I have to control myself because I'm excited. I'm like, oh, they're getting it. But I don't like that. I'm like, so I'm nodding my head and watching people as things are starting to change for them. And so reduced shame actually increases flexibility. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more. Talk about the self-sabotaging. Let's talk about language, which I just kind of introduced talking about him. So when we see, I'm going to say patterns maybe in the language. So let's just say you're sitting with a person like Shamus. And so maybe here are questions to actually, I'm going to say, open the loop without actually shaming him or shaming the person. And so these were things that I would do. So I'd be like, what tends to happen when things go well for you, right? And he would sit down and he would start to explain it. And then I would say, well, what do you feel in your body right before you make the decision that you regret? Okay. And so he had to think about that. And he had to think about where does he feel it in those different type of places. And then it's like, when did you first learn that good things don't last? Now, oftentimes when we're asking those type of questions, I'm actually doing them in a hypnotherapy session because then we're kind of tapping into subconscious and we're allowing that mind to go back as we ask this. And it's just cool. It's just so wonderful because then they're getting the answers. The answers are coming up from them. And then it's like, well, who taught you what success means? Now, notice what I'm not asking. Why did you do that? Okay, well, why? Because the why triggers defensiveness. I always go over this in my leadership classes. One of the reasons we try to avoid the why, at least in our Western perspective, why is often seen as an accusatory tone. Why did you do the report like that? Okay, so we want to keep the person off of that trigger defensiveness. So what happened right before that triggered actually the awareness, and awareness, I'm going to say, is the beginning of interruption. Now, look, this is what I want to say. Oh my goodness, I'm almost at my 30-minute mark. Okay. So if you're listening as a survivor, I want you to just think of a time. If this applies to you, I want you to think of the last time that you sabotaged something. And so what was happening, we're going to say 24 hours before that? Was there praise? Was there closeness, which is intimacy? Was there responsibility? Was there calm? And what did your body feel? Okay. That sensation, whatever it is, we're going to say is a doorway. Okay. Is a doorway. And the reason we talk about that is because because of the identity collapse fear. There's one other layer to this. And so if Shamus heals, if he stabilizes, if he builds a consistent life, he has to grieve something. In other words, he has to grieve the identity that he built, nervous system built, in order to survive. And it's so crazy because it's like, yeah, we want to have whatever this new identity, but sometimes this old identity, it's just so hard to let go because that's what we're used to. That's what we've been using to survive. And sometimes we actually have to grieve this identity that we've built to survive, right? So maybe that identity, oh, he's the wild one. Oh, he's the reckless one. Oh, he's the guy you can't depend on. Or maybe you're like, well, I can't depend upon anyone. You've built that. And so that identity actually kept him alive. And letting it go kind of feels like a betrayal of, I'm going to say, the younger self. It's like, think of it as like, hey, the little whatever kid inside saying, hey, what are you doing? That's what we use in order to survive, to get through. And it feels like a betrayal because that's the younger self. And you're trying to say, but hey, we're an adult now. We don't have to do it that way. And so sometimes sabotage isn't just fear. It's loyalty to the survival identity. Okay, now that's drop a mic on that one because that one is deep. And so therefore it must be handled carefully. Now, I'm going to say when I was working with Shamus, there was a crucial turning point. And so Shamus eventually, he said something that was powerful. And he said, I don't think I trust calm. All right. So when he said that, that sentence was showing, things were changing, and it was changing everything because now the problem is clear. He's not addicted to chaos. He is unfamiliar with safety, and unfamiliar feels dangerous for him. And so that means the work is not, hey, stop screwing up, but the work is learn to tolerate safety, right? And that's completely a different intervention. And you guys have noticed one of the things I talk about, even when we're talking about healing, that we don't heal if we don't feel that the safety is there first, right? And so that's why when you go up to the website and I say, look, if you want to work with me in this program, I need you to go through the Life by Design, which is a little 14-day whatever model that just kind of shows you some of the things that you'll be doing and getting into, because we need to create safety first. I need to let you know that this is a place that is safe, a place where you can actually heal. Okay. But if you don't feel safe, then you're going to be guarded, right? And so then we're not going to actually get anywhere. So I want you to think about this. I'm trying to decide, I could do a whole nother whatever sabotage. If you have any questions, more questions, send me in and I'll do a part 3. But I want you to think about this kind of as we close this pattern. Self-sabotage, one, is not random. I hope that you're understanding that now. It's structured. It's actually predictable, especially for those of us that have experienced this type of trauma, and also that it's wired. Okay, so it's wired by that nervous system. Okay, but here's the good news. If it's wired, then it means it can be rewired. Okay, that's the great thing about this. If it's conditioned, then it can be reconditioned. I don't know, maybe I will do a part 3 and we'll move, I'm going to say, from the awareness to the interruption cycle. I'm just trying to think about that. Maybe I will, or I'll actually maybe do it in a blog. But I want to leave you with this hope. I just want to leave you with this idea that the thing that you desire, the thing that you seek, we're going to call it maybe just a little bit more freedom, like my tagline, right? Carry less, live free, that it is possible, right? And that's why we designed the Break My Abuse program, because it is possible. I had one guy I was just working with, and he came here for another hypnotherapy session, which was usually a three day event. And he left, just beaming, and then just like, man, I'm starting to understand a little bit more. And okay, so now I'm going to take this and start, working on these things. And what the cool thing about it was, this time I asked him, I'm like, okay, so from this, what do you realize now that we need to work on? What do we need to solidify more, right? And he was able to give me those 3 things. And so now we move forward on those 3 things in our next meetings that he wants to work on actually improving in his life to actually overcome the survival mode. But he sees them, he knows what they are, and he actually gets to see how they are in his daily life, what they look like, which is just so great, which is so awesome. And that's why I love doing this. All right, guys, I think that we're going to call it a wrap for today for that. But hey, thank you so much. And like I said, keep those questions actually coming. So if you are the individual and you're like, okay, T, I just need a little bit more, the self-sabotage. It's really got me. Okay, you know what? My suggestion is go up to the website, hit that Life by Design button, put your information in, and let that 2-week journey begin. And then you get to decide after that, you know what? I think this will be good for me, great for me. Then we can talk about you actually being part of the program. All right, guys, I'll let you know how the podcast goes. And if they let me record it, then what I'll do is we'll just go ahead and actually record it, and then we'll use it for one of our podcasts, also. All right. Anything to help the peoples. All right, guys, until we meet again. Hey, just remember, one, of course, be safe. Remember, there's someone here who actually cares about you. And I hope you're picking up on that. And so if it's not just the sound of my voice, just realize I do this, right? Because I'm doing it for you. I remember the turning point that night that kept me from committing the suicide. It was just a few words. And it was, when you wake up in the morning, just remember that I love you. And that changed my whole world. And you know what? I know love has different meanings for us with the abuse. But I say this to you, hang in there and just know that there's someone who loves you.